In the first video of this series, we took a hard look at the suicide crisis before us. In this video, we pivot to a solution focus. To begin, we must first acknowledge that we are multi-part beings with a variety of needs to be whole and healthy. There are 4 dimensions that comprise our humanity. The health of each one plays a vital role in our sense of identity and purpose. The 4 dimensions of our humanity include the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. Here's a quick look into each. The first is the mental or psychological dimension. This is the cognitive function center whereby we churn out opinions, analysis, and perspectives of our world. We use it to extract information through diligent study and then apply that knowledge into our careers and hobbies and relationships. The mental dimension also serves as a warehouse of memories we can access at a whim and view with vivid technicolor sensory detail. The military focuses a great deal of attention on this dimension as service members train to become technically and tactically proficient in all manner of warrior tasks and drills. The DoD mandates a structured academic track where professional soldiers increase their knowledge before attaining the next role or responsibility. This required primary military education is essential to preparing today's leaders for tomorrow's engagements with near-peer threats. The mental dimension will serve you best if you challenge it daily. The next composition of our humanity is the emotional dimension. This dimension is what some refer to as the heart domain. It is the fountainhead of our feelings. Here, we innately assign feelings to various thoughts and impressions. Emotions help us survive with a fight or flight response. They are also integral as we socialize with our peers so that we can build these relationships and form teams to better serve some visionary end. The military seems to have 2 favorite emotions, anger and sadness, at least in basic training anyway. The drill instructors display a great deal of anger because there is always something new recruits are doing wrong. Then, of course, these inductees feel sad because their infractions earned them some extra PT. I'm sure you have stories. I certainly do. Many times, however, soldiers will feel glad because they overcame a challenge, attained a new rank, or returned home from some successful mission abroad. But whether mad, sad, or glad, there are many other shades of emotion that adds texture and substance to our humanity. And it is these emotions that we learn to cope with the many challenges we face in life. Monitoring and managing these emotions is what grants soldiers the capacity to overcome and succeed. We now turn to the physical dimension. Obviously, the body comprises the physical dimension. These carbon-based bodies of ours have very specific needs that, if neglected, can end our existence pretty quickly. Attentive grooming and hygiene are essential daily chores to maintain health and well-being. When it comes to proper diet and exercise, some of us are in great shape. Some of us are in okay shape, and some of us, well, have a shape. This is why the Army places such an emphasis on physical readiness. Height and weight, body composition, diet, rest, and exercise all are staple features of this aspect of our humanity. Serving in any of the branch services requires a physical fitness standard so that when the moment of truth arrives in combat, you can respond with your best. Put another way, more sweat and training equals less blood in combat. The added bonus of being physically healthy is that we feel good and are better prepared to tackle life's issues head on. By contrast, when we are weighted down on the exterior, we often feel weighted down on the interior. We are hampered by a mental fog and our motivation is sapped. When problems come, we summon an all but sluggish response and live well below our potential. Our last dimension is this mysterious realm of the spiritual. This is that strange, almost mystical side of us that energizes all the other dimensions. It represents that intangible core where the soul or the spirit resides. This primal aspect reaches outward to a higher power than ourselves and seeks to align with some greater purpose or being. Sages, priests, and a myriad of learned religious leaders aid the connection between the human and the divine, or unknown eternal power. Many have made this a priority and learned that if harnessed properly, a robust spirituality provides the extra oomph required to perform at peak capacity, emotionally, mentally, and physically. Of all the dimensions, this is the one that's most often neglected. Chaplains of all stripes operate in the armed forces, and yet our services are the most underutilized by service members. This is due in part because it is far easier to focus our efforts on the more tangible dimensions of our beings. It is also because the spiritual and the worldly are always constant competitors. Living in a world that caters to fleshly demands often outcompetes the need for slaking that inner spiritual thirst. And just like a four-legged stool with one short leg becomes a little unsteady, we ignore the spiritual dimension to our own peril. These four dimensions compose our distinctiveness in nature and separate us from all other life forms. And while these aspects of our humanity confer tremendous potential on us, they can also be our Achilles heel. Here's the kicker. If any one of these areas is neglected, it invariably leads to diminished resolve and renders us ill-equipped to deal with life. Rainy days are sure to come, and when they do, the strength of each will be tested. This is when normal daily stressors knock us out of balance and produce anxiety. Toxic levels of anxiety sabotage our resilience and reduces our capability to adapt to the difficulties of life. Left unchecked, this anxiety grows, breeds depression, and can become a clinically diagnosable condition. However, if we have been mindful to diligently monitor and satisfy the needs of each of these four dimensions, we can attain what I call holistic resilience. Holistic simply means all-encompassing, or in this case, health in all of these dimensions. This occurs through intentional effort to invest time in all four dimensions. This produces a sort of a forefront defense against life challenges and empowers us to remain resilient, even in the face of ferocious opposition. The best leaders are those who are cognizant of all these areas and are careful to foster holistic fitness. When reflecting on the question, what brings a person to consider suicide as a viable option, I would like to suggest that there is a pathway we could call the descent to despair. This descent is based on three key areas, and I contend that all three are present in not only those who complete suicides, but also, to a lesser extent, in those who contemplate it. The first step in this descent to despair begins with a faulty life perspective. A perspective is simply a point of view, a vantage point, or a lens through which you see your world. Depending on how you were raised or your life history, you may have acquired opinions of life that are very unhealthy and predispose you to a bleak outcome. It is no secret that many households growing up were not the healthiest environments for fostering emotional and spiritual resilience. Researchers have estimated that between 3.3 million and 10 million children are exposed to adult domestic violence each year. One researcher has estimated conservatively that at least 10 to 12% of children are exposed to intimate partner violence annually, with as many as 1/3 exposed at some point during childhood or adolescence. Now think about this for a moment. That means 1 in 3 of you watching this video have likely encountered abuse firsthand. We should also mention that these stats represent the reported cases of child abuse, but there are many more that go undetected and unreported. Those raised in nurturing home environments should be thankful and also maybe a little less judgmental when observing others with poor perspectives. Many have no concept of what it is like to be raised in a home where screaming, name-calling, shoving, and hitting are the preferred methods for solving problems. Being raised in a broken home can certainly foster some defective perspectives. Abuse of any kind can taint our worldview. And this is why many hold views that are destructive, such as the following list. Quit when things get too hard. Entitlement mentality. People owe me just because I exist. I'm always a victim. Look out for number 1. People are here to serve me. If it feels good, do it. Life is cruel. Do to others before they do to you. And the list goes on and on. If you possess a similar worldview, you may someday find yourself on the path of despair. Again, careful scrutiny of your 4 dimensions can help you examine your perspectives and determine how to change them. We will talk later about how to reverse this trend. The second step down the descent to despair is the neglect of basic needs. Our basic survival needs for physical well-being include food, water, air, shelter, warmth, and health and sex. However, as Abraham Maslow, the celebrated American psychologist, points out, these needs are just the foundational level. They set the conditions that allow us to begin our ascent into a promising identity and live out our highest calling. Ascending his famous hierarchy of human needs, we observe the psychological needs of love and belonging, esteem, and then culminating at the apex of his model, something he describes as self-actualization. If foundational needs are not met, we are blocked from climbing the pyramid to more substantial needs that inform our sense of identity and purpose. Perhaps you can see now that all 4 human dimensions plays a critical role here. Sometimes we neglect our most fundamental needs due to a stigma that reaching out for help is a sign of weakness. Now, this is ironic, since most of us reach out for help in other areas. If you're physically unprepared to take the Army Combat Fitness Test, you reach out. In addition to participation in Unit PT, this is when we intuitively reach out for a gym membership or acquire a diet plan. Some will even hire a fitness expert as a personal trainer to help them achieve their physical, weight, and performance goals. When we are ill, we reach out to the pharmacy or a hospital. When we need a new home, we contact a realtor maybe. When we lack financial expertise for future planning, we consult a retirement advisor. For most of us, this is simple common sense. When we are lacking in some area, we seek professional help in that targeted area. And yet when it comes to psychological support, we paste a label on that resource as taboo because we are ashamed that we cannot manage our own thought life, emotions, and behavior. This is nonsense. It is time to view the behavioral sciences as a valuable expert resource and preventative measure. These dedicated professionals are here to help us regain our footing and to restore us when we lose some of our mental and emotional resolve. Don't be one of those soldiers who mocks a buddy for seeking help. If you do, you may inadvertently be complicit in their downfall. Let's not do that. Our final step, descending down into the descent to despair, is depleted emotional reserves. Now, what in the world is that? Early on in a mission, deployment, or other long-term commitment, most people are filled with a sense of excitement for the new challenge. As the new mission wears on, that initial zeal often gives way to fatigue. It's the daily grind that erodes our determination and leaves us feeling empty. This is because we experience what is known as the drain-fill principle. Now, what's that? The drain-fill principle says if you drain faster than you fill, it will leave you feeling ill. To illustrate this, imagine for a moment that you are a container. Each day you exert yourself and effectively drain your emotional reserves. To offset this, you must intake on a consistent basis. This is obvious when it comes to food consumption, but perhaps not so much when it comes to emotional reserves. Here again, We find the intersection with the four human dimensions as we care for our physical through the rest, diet, and exercise plans we develop. We care for emotions through recreation, relationships. We care for the spiritual through consistent devotion to our faith. And we care for our mental dimension through various learnings and valuable education to help build a brighter future. Care in all these areas effectively fills us. Failure to fill depletes us at an alarmingly fast rate. After time of heavy depletion, we hit a wall or emotional breakdown. Continuing down that path indefinitely leads us to a nervous breakdown where someone calls those guys in white robes who drop a net over us and they fit you with a coat that ties in the back. Not a great place to be. When we struggle in any one of these areas, we can usually manage it and rebound. However, if we have taken all three steps down the descent to despair, we encounter a compounding effect that complicates our recovery. This prompts a very important question. How do we remedy each of these three key areas? Or put another way, how do we ascend out of despair? It's really quite simple. It is a reverse process from the descent. If a faulty life perspective takes us to despair, a quality, life-giving perspective will help bring us out. Compound that with emotional fulfillment and a network of caring relationships, and you will find your resolve returning with power and vibrancy. Then you can thrive rather than just survive. So, what composes a healthy life perspective? Take a moment and pause the video and discuss this question as a group for about 5 minutes. Go ahead. Here are some suggested facets of a healthy life perspective. First, embrace the fact that life is hard. The Roman statesman and philosopher Seneca reminds us that difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. That's an important fact to remember. Mental and emotional stress are not bad things. In fact, the military fabricates stressful environments all the time so that when our nation's warriors confront the real thing, they will have honed the requisite skills to improvise, adapt, and overcome. In this life, anything of any lasting value is usually earned through toil, sweat, blood, and tears. Embrace this fact and move on. Fortify this truth with a bend but not break attitude. Leadership guru John Maxwell is fond of saying, attitude determines your altitude. Additionally, James Allen wisely observes, a man's attitude will create the situation he imagines. When, not if, you confront hardships, how will you view them? Will you gawk in disbelief that this is happening to you, or will you rally your moxie to meet this new adversary head on? Your attitude from the start is critical if you want to see something through to the end. Armed with this perspective, move out with a determination to bend but not break. Another facet of a healthy life perspective is to shift focus from what if to what is. What if is an imagined fiction, whereas what is represents reality. Rather than catastrophizing the worst possible outcome of your situation, hunt the good stuff in your circumstances. Control yourself and do what you can rather than worrying about things that you simply cannot control. Also, please remember that a healthy life perspective should include the God component. Views of God can have seismic impacts on a person's sense of worth. If your life perspective maintains that your universe, force, or God is angry with you and that you constantly disappoint him or her, you can feel this at a visceral level in everything you attempt in life. If by contrast, you see God as loving, compassionate, merciful, and gracious toward you, and a being who is absolutely excited about you, celebrates you, is in love with you, is giddy over you, and is backing you, you will have a power source unrivaled by anything else in this life. This is the impetus behind Joshua 1:9, which states, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. The second step to ascend out of despair is to surround yourself with a network of caring relationships. Most of Abraham Maslow's needs hierarchy is met in meaningful relationships with others. This is why it is essential that we cultivate a team mentality. The diversity and variety within the human race is what makes us strong. It is prudent that we view diverse people groups as opportunities to play on different teams in life. Serving side by side with a band of brothers and sisters can enrich our love for people and establish lasting friendships that will endure a lifetime. These friends can add a layer of resilience most people don't fully comprehend. This is the meaning behind King Solomon's adage in Proverbs 17:17, "A friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity." According to a 2018 study in an article published by the United Service Organization, social connections can act as a buffer against the impact of stressful or negative life experiences or on mental health. The International Association for Suicide Prevention and the World Health Organization also cites social connection as a crucial method in preventing suicide. The Army has worked hard to infuse into its culture the DNA of relationship building. The 7 Army values all have a humanitarian orientation. All of them, to some degree, contain a focus on others. The Army values of loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage are all intended to benefit others. And how about the Soldier's Creed? Anything in there that provokes awareness and concern for others? Certainly. To function well from the squad level to the division level, we must serve others and cooperate as solid teams by meeting each other's instinctive social needs. We all have an innate need to feel connected, to belong, to be valued and loved. Even if you are a stark, raving introvert, most of you would also admit that life would be pretty lonely without people. Come on, admit it. The hope is that as we do life with people, we collect a few true blue friends that agree to do life with us for the long haul. It is a wise strategy to do inventory of the friends in your life. How many do you have? Would they take you in for some reason if you were out on the street? Reverse this as well and ask yourself, who in your world relies on you? Whose life would be imperiled with your abrupt departure? This little reflection can be a strong deterrent to suicide when you consider what life would be like for those who suffer your loss. The final step out of despair is to consistently seek emotional fulfillment through purposeful living. By this, I mean that you live life in such a way where there is always another goal to knock down, some other achievement to take on. Purposeful living is objective-oriented, in which a person sets manageable, worthwhile goals that bring success and fulfillment. Purposeful living is living that is constantly stretching for that next rank, next responsibility, next degree, next hobby, next achievement, next skill set, next you name it. Speaking on the topic of purpose, Auschwitz Nazi concentration camp survivor Primo Levi adeptly observes, the aims of life are the best defense against death. He discerned that much of life's meaning is to grow. When we have holistic health, we strive for accomplishments. And when we make progress, experiencing success, we make gains toward our goals, we feel fulfilled. It is one thing to start a race, but the reward doesn't come until we cross that finish line. This is where we receive that rush and exhilaration of success, something we were all designed to experience. The secret of your success is found in your daily routine. Building the value of purposeful living into your life can substantially increase your sense of fulfillment. Well, friends, that's a wrap for this video. The last video in this series will focus on intervention. It will equip you with the vital skills needed when encountering a person in crisis. God bless you, and thanks for watching. So here are some post-video discussion questions you might want to consider discussing together as a group. Number 1, do you think people balance the 4 human dimensions well, or do they tend to neglect 1 or 2? And why is this? Number 2, what depletes you emotionally, and how do you recover? Number 3, why is a person's outlook on life so important? Number 4, how can a person adopt a more positive life perspective? And lastly, number 5, what life ventures bring you the most fulfillment? Share these with the group. Thank you.